Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Becky Siekmeier, and I'm the director of the SciTech Internship program. And my trusty colleague, Piper Cleveland, is also with us. She is the Student Outreach and Communications Manager and will be helping to field your questions today. And we are very excited to talk with our guests about how internships are managed at their companies. And I'm really hoping that their insights are going to help you either set up a new program at your company or help you step up your game with your existing company. So let's go ahead and introduce our panelists. They have three things in common. They are all wonderful human beings. They all hire interns through SciTech, and interns repeatedly have a great experience at their companies. And we know this because we try to do site visits with as many companies as we can every year. So with us today are Susan Allen, Senior Human Resources Business Partner at Monteris Medical. I want to give a wave, Susan. There we go. And Jonathan Banks, the President and Founding Partner at Next.
Hey, everyone.
And Mike Norton, Managing Partner at Railbox Consulting.
Hi.
All right. Well, thanks so much to all of you for taking time to join us today. I know you've got very busy schedules. So I have 8 prepared questions for our panelists, and then I'm going to open things up to the rest of you. And to keep background audio distractions under control, if you could please remain muted and then just use the chat to put your questions in there, and Piper will help us field those questions as we go. All right, so my very first question, and I'll switch up the order here on who goes first. And so Jonathan, I'm going to start with you. What reservations did you have initially about hiring interns? Were there some stigmas attached that you had to get over? And then what have you learned since about what interns are capable of?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Becky. And thanks everybody for joining us in this conversation today. I think that there's a lot of stigma around interns and internships that are pretty common. And the one that I really faced was kind of like almost a feeling of like insecurity and inadequacy about like being able to nurture someone that's so early in their career and get them off on the right start. So there's just kind of, you face a lot of hesitancy in that way. And what we learned to do was to actually use that as a step forward. And so being able to think about, okay, why do we feel this way? Why might we be feeling hesitant? Is it, are we lacking some processes? Is there some deficiencies in our onboarding? Do our supervisors, are they maybe pressed for time or already over capacity in a way to support them? And as we went through those conversations, we were really able to learn about what our capacity and capabilities were to support interns, and also the type of internship we could support. So then you have a good idea of what resources are available within your company, the type of time folks have and expertise they have to support their internships. And it helps you build a more concise framework for using for your interns, so you can combat all those feelings that you started with, and make sure that the intern gets off to a great start, or really enjoys the early parts of their career and finds value working with your organization.
Yeah, that's great. Really good input. Susan.
Well, I will say thank you to you also, Becky, for including me in the panel. We have had a great relationship with SciTech, so I appreciate you letting me share that with other people. The hesitation that we had is, I think, one that probably all small companies face, is our managers, our supervisors said, oh my gosh, we're so busy, and an intern is going to take up so much time. All I'll be doing is training them, and I'm not sure I can do it. So I never got that they didn't see the value in it, or they didn't want to help a student with their career. It was more, they were missing the piece of how are they going to help us? And quite honestly, what we have learned, and I have a lot of people asking for interns now, what we have learned is the students that are coming out of these programs and these majors and coursework they've taken have been able to provide value to our organization. And I think that's a tribute to both SciTech and the students. They've been able to come in and do real project work. And once we got that settled and we had that as a proven track record with both SciTech and the interns, I have had no issue with supervisors asking, when can I get my intern? So it's been very good. But that was their first hesitation, was it's going to take up my time.
Yep, I can see that. Mike.
Yeah, no, and just echo Becky, thanks for having us, and thanks for me on the panel and saying I'm a good person. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I appreciate it either way. I just kind of piggyback on what has been said already. I think there is that concern and that anxiety about, are we going to have the bandwidth, especially at a small company, are we going to have the bandwidth to onboard this person, where in a lot of cases, when you onboard a new full-time employee, you don't really have a full structure around it. So onboarding an intern that's going to have maybe a longer ramp up period and has an expiration date usually on the end of it, with an internship, there is kind of that, you have to get that buy-in from whomever on the team is going to be working with them to invest in that intern and get them up to speed. But our experience has been that once you do that, they're bringing a very different perspective to the equation, and especially if you have a project already going that you just need support with. Once you get them on board, maybe there's things that takes longer than you expected it to get going, but maybe there's other things that just happen a lot faster and they get right away. But usually once it gets rolling, they're adding value to the equation, and they're a productive member of the team.
Yeah, that's great. And I see that people are starting to post their questions. That's awesome. Keep putting those in the chat, and we'll get to those towards the end. So another question that I have is, finding a good fit for your position is so important to the success of the internship. So what attributes are you looking for in your candidates, and how do you determine whether or not the candidate has them? Susan, I'm going to start with you this time.
Yes, again, small companies, I think it's even more imperative to have the internship experience be a good one for both the intern and the company. You try and find a good fit along those lines. We look for the things that I think probably a lot of you do in candidates, is that they're collaborative, they have good communication skills, they're able to work effectively as part of a team, flexible, good critical thinking skills. So those are the types of things that we're looking for, that the really characteristics for an intern candidate. And we use all the information that we can get to make those assessments and evaluations. We do like it if they come knowing something about Monteris. I think that brings forth a message that says we're not just looking for an internship to put on the resume. It feels more like they're saying, we want to come to your company for what you're doing. So we do value that. We use behavior-based interview questions where we'll ask about when they worked effectively as a part of a team, what was their role in working on that team, and when they look back on it, what did they learn? So we will use a lot of that to try and get at some of those competencies. And then we also look at things that are on the resume. What courses have they taken? Even things like, are they volunteering? Are they working while they're going to school full time? Just trying to get that full picture of what might be a good fit for them. And do we as Monteris offer it?
Yeah, well, it's great to hear you say a couple of those things about behavioral based questions, and do they know something about your company? We did a workshop yesterday with students about the STAR method of interviewing and how to research companies before an interview and that kind of thing. So yeah, we're trying to get at it from both sides. Mike, anything that you'd like to add to how to find a good fit?
Yeah, I think we're a relatively small company, and we're bringing in interns on the technology side, mainly for project development, application development, that sort of thing. So it's a little bit different in the sense that we only have a developer team of a handful of people. We're going to have someone come in and take on a big or a broad array of tasks assigned with any project. Week to week, it could be two totally different things. So Kind of what we look for more is somebody kind of, are they interested? Are they gaining exposure beyond just their coursework, whether it's prior to, if it's grad school or something like that, or do they have undergrad experience in that, or do they have a position in that, a professional position in that role beyond their coursework? Have they built like a little project, like a database or something just for fun because they wanted exposure to that? And then really, I think the most important thing for us is once we found somebody that might be a fit is, are they going to be gritty? Are they going to be determined to actually get something done? Because so much of software development is hitting a roadblock, researching online, keeping going, and if you don't have somebody that's willing to run through those roadblocks, it's easy, especially for an intern or someone with limited exposure or limited experience, to keep going. So somebody that is willing to kind of grind it out, I think is really important, especially on a small team.
Yeah, very good point. Jonathan.
Well, I don't know, Becky. I mean, SciTech makes it so easy to connect with interns that are a good fit. I mean, honestly, the system, it seems like if I put a concise description out into the SciTech platform, most of the folks who come my way are pretty close to meeting what we need. And I don't know the magic that y'all work to make that happen, but it does happen quite well. What we do is we build a role, and my company is a smaller company as well, so our needs change with each intern that we bring on. And so we scope out what the position is going to be and what we need it to do, and we make sure that we kind of have the supports in place for that position. And before we bring the intern on, we build a 30-day project and a 90-day project for them to work on. And so in their initial orientation with our organization, they get onboarded to all the kind of regular stuff that all of our staff gets onboarded to, handbook, tools, etc. But then they get their special 30-day project, which is basically takes what they bring to the job and applies it to a project that provides something of value for our company and for our partners. And then we use that to extend to kind of more integrated work with the rest of the team over the next 90 days. So that's the on-ramp that we use for our interns when we bring them on. And, just going back, working with SciTech, there's a lot more, I would just say, flexibility and kind of discretion over who you can work with. There's some other internship programs that we work with where it's kind of like, here's your interns, and you're like, okay, here we go, let's do it. And you kind of make it work. And but with SciTech, like I said, there's usually a pretty good match right off the bat, and I just continue to be thankful to y'all for managing that infrastructure, and it really works for us.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate that. So how do you determine the projects and the tasks that your interns will work on? I'm always kind of curious about this, especially the complexity level. And when you're working with a small company and over a short period of time, do you take into account the interests of the student, what they come in saying that they want to learn? Mike, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Sure. Yeah. I think for us, for it to be productive, it has to be something we're already working on. We tend to work on a few big projects or one big project at a time. And so it's really about support for those existing projects. And so we'll be discussing that throughout the interview process as they come on board. It's hard though. You never know really kind of what you're going to get in terms of skill level with an intern. We've never had anybody that's been completely unproductive, but certainly there's different levels of productivity with interns. And you don't really know that until they get going, and you don't really actually know it until they kind of have ramped up and understand what they're even working on. So it's hard to really understand what to assign them to until they really show you, I would say. And if you can be patient and be a little bit flexible and know that maybe it's going to take longer, or maybe it's going to be way quicker, and you can throw them on the next task and bring them up to speed on something more complex immediately after, from intern to intern, you don't know. And one thing I guess I would even add to that is we had one intern that was really great, really capable, but just had very limited bandwidth because of their school schedule. So we're only able to contribute like 10 hours a week or so, let's say on average. And even in that, they helped us kind of interrupt this very complex process that we were trying to, duct tape together to make something work, because they just thought about it a different way and said, well, what if we came in here and did it this way? And then suddenly it was like, all right, we can use the, existing database that we have and everything else. And I think understanding that even if they're not what you expected them to be, if you can be patient and put them in a spot where they can add value, they will.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. Jonathan.
I'll just comment that sometimes it changes throughout your interaction with an intern too. I think kind of like the summer time interns are probably like the most maybe noted or notable that folks think about. But a lot of times we have interns during the school year too, and a lot of times our interns are doing school during the summer. And so we try to make sure that we are highly communicative and transparent around what they need to do for their academic careers while they're with the company. Because it can be very confusing if you're not transparent about that and you start to think, oh, well, it seems like the work isn't getting the priority that it was once getting. What's going on here? And so, you're able to schedule the type of projects that you're doing around the academic calendar and your interns kind of coursework, then you're able to really kind of push on some projects a little bit more when they have more time, and really kind of just be supportive and say, this is finals week, we're gonna pull back on a few things and change our expectations now.
Yeah, that's a really good, smart thing, and I'm sure they appreciate that. Susan.
Well, we actually ask the managers or the supervisors that want an intern to bring forward what they would have the intern working on. And really that's just to make sure that there isn't a desire to have them do things that would really be more the administrative, because that's not what they're coming on to learn. That doesn't really provide them with an experience that I think they're looking for or they're capable of doing. So we do put that in place, that the managers need to tell us what they're going to work on. We haven't had a problem with that. In terms of the students' interest, when we have the candidates, when we post the internships on the SciTech site, when we have the students reaching out to us, we frequently find that they are coming to us because they like what we've said is in the internship. We work in the neurological area and there's an interest in that. And we get candidates that are saying, I've already taken these courses in neuro, I want to learn more about it. When we have our clinical internships available, quite honestly, we get a lot of the pre-med students that are interested in looking specifically at that type of work. So it's been something where we've found that their interests will correlate with what we have as far as work done. But we aren't as kind, I think, as Jonathan is, where we develop the project for them. It's closer to, we have this need, here's what you would work on, are you interested?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Jonathan, the next question I want to start with you on, you were talking a little bit about onboarding before. What tips do you have for creating a really welcoming and inclusive environment for interns? It's always hard to be the new person. And I think when you're an intern and you've already got the fear that you're, you don't know enough, you got the imposter syndrome, probably big time. How do you go about that?
Yeah, so to create that welcoming and inclusive environment, I think one thing is just think of yourself in their shoes, and they want to be a part of the team. They want to see themselves on the website. They want to see themselves mentioned in social media. They want to be introduced during meetings and have their roles noted and what their contributions are, and all of that's very important. So definitely don't skip over some of those things that happen for your your full-time staff, extend that to your interns. That's maybe one of the more like one of the tasks that you do on the surface there. I think once you get inside, like welcoming them into their role and what they're going to do for the company, is just have those a really streamlined onboarding process. We use technology to do ours. It works really well in the remote environment where the intern has various things they read, videos they watch, people they reach out to, things they accomplish, like all of these tasks that they go through for probably their first 2 full working days. So maybe their first 8 hours is spent just going through getting acclimated, and that's really important for them, and it gives them a sense of accomplishment right out of the gate. Like, yeah, I've done all my onboarding, and now we're ready to have the conversations with your supervisor. And then the supervisor is just really closely in touch with that intern. So they go on to a team that's doing work, some sort of project, and the intern has that 30-day project, which is adding something specific that the team needs, right? It's going to be something usable for that team. So the value of what they're doing and the drive to do something important is already kind of built into the onboarding process for them. And then lastly, I would just say that to keep them feeling included, one of the things that we do is we use a process called constant feedback and recognition. It's basically your one-to-one with your supervisor every 2 weeks, and we have those with interns as well. And so they get to have that feedback with their supervisor on a constant basis and check in on how those projects are doing, making sure they're fitting in with the team. Lastly, we just use tools, like your Slack. We use a lot of virtual meetings, Google Meet, Zoom, all this sort of stuff. So you're always kind of a click away, and we, that access is extended to interns, and they use it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Let's see. I have Susan up next for this one. How to create a welcoming and inclusive environment.
Yes, well, now that we generally have more than one that are going to be with us for the summer, we have tried to start them all on the same day, which gives them the ability to meet each other and, the safety in numbers approach when they're new. But we do send out an announcement ahead of time to the organization that says, who's coming, what school they're at, who their supervisor is, and what functional area they're going to be in. So we send that out ahead of time, and then we start them all on the same day. And then they all go to lunch with their supervisors that first day. And actually, we have them sit in the same area so that they can continue to learn from each other and get to know each other. Now, a lot of the work that we have them do, the projects, they need to be a lot more mobile than sitting at their cube. They do a lot in the R&D labs that we have, or they'll go into our clean room or into the manufacturing area. So they're up and about, but their home base keeps them all together. So that has worked out well. Some of the other things we've done is we've really tried to just treat them like regular employees. They get added to any distribution list. So we have CEO monthly updates. They are immediately put on the distribution list for those. Any company picnics, they're included in those things. So by just adding them to that distribution, they immediately get information about what's going on across the organization. So I think that helps to keep them included at a broader level. The other thing that we have done is we have 30-minute meet and greets. And of course, these have been done virtually, primarily since the pandemic. But what those are is each of our senior leadership team members will take 30 minutes with the interns as a group, and they will explain their function to the interns, answer questions to the interns, talk about Monteris, just give them a sense of who we are but we also want to give them a link with our senior team. And we even tell them during those meet and greets, you know, go to your LinkedIn page and friend me now, or put a meeting notice out. So we try and get them to understand, yeah, you're only here for 3 months, but we view this as something where we'd like to support you and continue to provide guidance if that's of benefit to you. So we put that in place to help them get to know a little bit more about the office and work and our leadership. And it's gone very well. So we'll keep doing that one.
That's awesome. And Mike.
Yeah, no, and I think some great suggestions already and some things we already do. I think really the only thing I would kind of add to that, the comment about treating them like an employee or an existing employee, I agree with that 100%, and really immersing them into what's happening, because that's the, you know, from their perspective, that's what they're hoping to get, is real life work experience. So if you're bringing them in just like you would anyone else, I think that's something valuable to them. Another thing that we do is we expect them to speak up in meetings. I mean, we don't like make them uncomfortable or anything like that, but we kind of set the expectation ahead of time, like, hey, on the weekly dev call, you need to update people on what you're working on. And even if it's just you're still working on the same project, let us know why you're stuck, or let us know, you know, what you're working on, or where you're at with it, or anything else. And I think pushing them to kind of, hey, you're part of this team and you need to speak up and be a part of the conversation, sometimes accelerates that integration of them into the team. So
yeah, that feeds really well into my next question, which is to talk to us about how you check in with your interns. You know, how do you do it and how often do you do it? And Mike, since you were kind of on that tangent already talking about your weekly check-ins, I'm going to start with you and then go to Susan.
Yeah, so we've been fully remote since 2015. So even pre-pandemic, we were, you know, Zoom calls and things like that. We've had employees all over the country. So our CIO is actually based in Phoenix, even though he's running teams that are based in Minnesota sometimes. Nice. He's in the north central area, or I guess now central. Phoenix is so expansive. But anyway, it's you know, having that regular cadence of check-in calls, of project calls on specific projects, you know, whatever they are. And so that they understand, all right, here's the flow and here's the rhythm of how we work. And here's the expectation of when things need to be turned around by, is that next call or that next meeting. I would also say, and I think it was brought up earlier too, getting out of the office, it's been obviously tougher to meet in person, but just having lunch or something like that with the team and talking about things that aren't work, you know, especially if it's an intern that's from somewhere outside of Minnesota, or even just outside of the Twin Cities or whatever region they're based in now for the internship, ask them about where they're from, ask them about anything other than, you know, something where they feel like they've got to be impressive to, you know, the group. So I think those things are helpful.
Yeah, good point. Susan, I'm going to jump to you.
Yeah, I will echo the weekly meetings. And I think that is not only just to check in on them, but to also help them understand the value of those. And they're going to see that in a lot of work environments, because that's how you track progress, where projects are at. That's how you get beyond things that are getting in the way. So they definitely have a weekly check-in with their supervisor. But then we also have once a month while they're with us, the senior leadership team member that they met on the meet and greet will just check in with them for 30 minutes saying, you know, how's it going? What are you finding of value? What do you wish we'd done differently? That type of thing with them. So we put that in place. And then I also follow up with them kind of in the middle of the internship, and just see how things are going. So we try to make sure that we've got some communication in a very formal way. The other thing that I do see is as soon as they're on a project team, they're reaching out to other members of the project team, or the project team members are reaching out to them, or they're working on a specific task with someone and they partner with them. And so I see a lot of it happening just organically from the projects they're on.
Yeah. And Jonathan, anything else you want to add to how you do check-ins? How often?
Yeah. I mean, I think I kind of talked a little bit about that, you know, the bi-weeklies that we do and the projects that we do. I guess the other thing that, you know, I'd add about, it's not quite a check-in, but it's another way of keeping them engaged, is during the weekly meeting, there's spots for staff to present certain things, and one of the things that we go over are our values and core behaviors in the organization, and everybody kind of puts their spin. Here's how it's showing up for me, and interns get involved with that right away and have responsibilities to present just like everybody else. And so that's one thing that happens. And Susan, I just kind of, when you were talking, one thing I was thinking about was you have a whole culture there that's embracing the interns. It's like the behavior is not being dictated necessarily on how the check-ins happen. And I think that's probably just maybe some secret sauce that folks are trying to build.
Yeah, good point. My last question, because I'm going to skip my last two, because I see that we've got quite a few questions and I want to make sure that we get to as many of those as we can. So my last question is going to be for all of you to talk about exit interviews or anything else special that you do in terms of intern presentations. And Susan, I'm excited for you to answer this one, but I'm going to start with Mike.
Yeah, I think you're kind of judged to a certain extent on how successful your interns are after they leave your company. And we've been really happy to see some of the places that our interns have landed, whether it's like a little tech startup, or we had one that ended up at Optum in their technology side. And it's cool to see, or rather it's cool to be just even a part of that growth. So, I don't know that there's anything secret or magical that we do in that, other than just kind of letting them choose like how fast they want to accelerate and how much exposure they want to have. And part of the individual who ended up at Optum, part of the reason that they ended up there was that she added to her development toolkit, so to speak, and was able to say with a track record that she was a full stack developer now. And then apply for a full stack developer position. I think SciTech did a write up on her even. But I think that those types of things, if you can set your intern up for success and it's a beneficial thing for them, like that's a marketing tool for you for that next internship, for hiring in the future. If people want to work with your company and see that it's a beneficial thing to do, that's good for everybody.
Right. Jonathan, I'm going to go to you next.
Yeah, it's super great points, Mike. And it just feels great to see folks go on to the next step of their career. And, just who knows, maybe it was something you did or not, but you'd like to think that you were part of, their early success in their career. That's an awesome feeling to have. One of the offboarding, one of the things that we do, and it's pretty standard. We just do a digital exit interview. So there's just some standard questions we use to say, like, what were you looking for when you joined the company? How did that show up? How did you see that, play out in your role? How are you, better prepared now when you go out into the world? And then, kind of like, what did we do wrong? How could we improve for the next person that we bring in? So, just a really quick, survey that we share with the interns. Our process is, we have folks coming in and out of the company. So I will just say, we don't have maybe some of like the graduation ceremonies that you see some places where they have like a whole class of interns come and go at the same time. Ours is just a bit more staggered at our company.
So Susan, tell us about your process.
Yeah, and I totally support and echo what Mike and Jonathan are both saying. It's kind of one of those where you want them to leave on a good note. You want to hear what they have to say, what they learned, and then you have to let them fly. But we have them give a presentation on what their project was for the summer, and we help them along with, there's a set template that they use. And they give it to our senior leadership team. And we honestly do that with the idea that our senior leadership team is a very real group of individuals. And I think it's a good experience for them to present to that level. And again, we're very supportive of them. So we have them present to the senior leadership team. We have the CEO teed up so that he's going to ask a question. but it is a total setup, all of you. It's, you know, a very easy question that they can answer, but then they've gotten through giving a presentation to the senior leadership team and answering a question from a CEO. So we have structured it to try and hear what they have to say, but also give them one last level of support as they head out. And I just have to share this because the last page of the presentation that each of them gives is what did they learn at Monteris over the summer. And I love this, you guys, because you forget how long you've been in the workforce and how much you now take for granted that you know, because some of the things we've had that they will put down they learned are things like, I learned there's a lot of food in the office. And my favorite one was this young lady wrote, I learned never to switch my chair with someone else's from their cube. And I thought, well, that's probably a good thing to learn as an intern. So
Oh, that's so funny.
It is as fun for us as it is for good for them, I guess.
Yeah, and I just want to say how much SciTech appreciates being invited to those final presentations. So if any of the rest of you are doing that, we'd love to come. It's always really fun, and they have a packed room. It's not like there's like 5 or 6 people. There's like 20 people packed into this room when they're doing these presentations. So I'm always very impressed at how well these interns do. Okay, Piper, do you want to read through the questions?
Yeah, so we've done some talking already. One of the first questions we had was about, has anyone hosted interns virtually? And I think we've done a pretty good job of covering that so far. So then the next question that we have here is from Daniel, and he's wondering, how many weeks do you all tend to have these interns for? Jonathan already kind of chimed in the chat, but maybe Susan and Mike, you want to jump in as well?
Yeah, I'll just quickly respond. They generally come like the week after classes get out. So it's like the 3rd or last week of May, and they stay until the middle of August, generally speaking.
We've had throughout the year, so really it's more project-based for us. We try and mirror it to semesters to kind of make it work, obviously, for the student, but whether it's a spring semester or the summer break, you know, we base it on when we have a need.
Awesome, cool. So another question that we have here is, has anyone calculated the support/mentor man hours needed to host an intern? This includes planning for the intern, working with the intern, and then post-review.
I'll take that one. I don't think we have actually calculated it. What I will tell you is we use internships as a developmental tool for our employees. So frequently their supervisor is someone who may not have supervised anyone before, their manager. And so while it is taking up time, we also see that as the individual's development. So they have the ability to start to think about what it means to have a new employee. What do you need to have them do? How are you going to manage and evaluate their work? So by approaching it from not just here's what the intern is going to learn, but also allowing some of our team members to get a chance to supervise without having to step in and own it forever, we see that as a nice developmental side of the equation as well.
Yeah, can I just jump in and say, one of the most exciting things for Piper and I to see is when we have an intern or a former intern who's now working at a SciTech company and they're managing the interns. So you kind of see that full cycle of growth, and that's been really fun.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So we have another question here. This is from Mark. How do you qualify communication skills? And then in addition to that, perhaps maybe if English is not the student's first language. So I guess how does soft skills come into your evaluation process as well?
Yeah, I can jump in on that. I mean, we've hired a number of international students, so English has been a second language in I think most of those cases. And you know, sometimes it is a little bit of a challenge on like team calls or things like that. If we're speaking at a you know full pace or a fast pace, and they're not maybe keeping up with everything that's been said, especially when you're virtual, that can be difficult. But I think you know for us, everything is so much project based, and it's more about outcomes and what have you done, what have you produced, that for us it hasn't been an issue, even when someone has maybe difficulty communicating. We have had, just being fully transparent, we've had one intern that's had somewhat of a difficult time communicating on team calls and kind of keeping up, and I think that you just have to be patient with that and understand that that's not an area where they're going to maybe be as productive as other interns. But if you can set them up for success on a project or in some way that facilitates what they've got and what they're comfortable with, I think that there's ways to work around those types of things. And I would say definitely don't be anxious about hiring an international student. In particular, with some of our best interns, one of our now full-time employees that came through SciTech was an international student when we brought them on board. So definitely some great people to bring on from the international student community.
I would add to that as, oh, go ahead. Sorry, Jonathan.
I insist, Susan.
Oh, I would add to what Mike's saying as well, is a lot of time with the STEM candidate, anytime you're looking for an engineer or someone that's going to work in our clinical area, there's a good chance that English is going to be their second language. And so you're dealing with it frequently in that regard. And it is just working with it and understanding how to manage. And international students, you start to move into all the visa situations and all, but the language is something that we have found is we're really able to work with it, and they work with us too.
I'm glad, Susan, I'm glad you brought up the visa situation, because that was a little bit of a surprise for me, and to get into that. But I mean, what a help, for the student. Such a complex thing, especially if they're here away from their family and things like that. I mean, it's just such a support for them and at an important time in their life. So getting to know, more familiar with that process. I'm not an expert or anything, but I certainly know to fill out the paperwork and do all those things. Our company, one of our values is global worldview. And so when it comes down to communication, it's a two-way street, and ensuring that folks, communication is all about taking what something means in my head and having it get you understand what that means, and the same thing back and forth. So the language that's used, if everybody speaks the same language, it's a lot easier. But it doesn't eliminate the need to live up to that value if there are different languages being spoken. And so I think that one of the key things that we put in place that helps with that is a solid system of work, making sure that the work and the requirements are documented in a system, and that we have clear ways of describing the work, using action-based sentences that describe kind of like the whole concept of what you're talking about, ensuring that the communication is kind of meets those international communication standards and formats.
Awesome. Cool. A lot of the questions in the chat have been kind of centered around remote situations. And so when we were talking earlier about weekly check-ins, somebody mentioned that they would feel a bit more comfortable perhaps with daily check-ins, and wanted to know your opinions on that.
I guess I would say our weekly are more structured calls where they're specific, like the dev call or the team call or what, the weekly one-on-one with that intern. I don't know that we necessarily have daily follow-ups every single day with interns, but certainly in the first few weeks we would, because just getting them kind of going, it's easy to get stuck those first few weeks. And I think that's when you maybe need to be nudging them every day. But we're big believers in macro managing. Here's your project. Here's when we're going to be talking about it again. We don't care if you work at 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. We just care that it gets done. And I think we approach it a little bit more like that in terms of kind of the day-to-day. But the regular meetings, just so that we all know we're checking in, we're going to show progress, and we're going to talk about the next step in whatever project. That's kind of what those are structured for.
Yeah,
think,
to your point, Mike, the first 7 days we have the first week we have daily check-ins, just 15 minutes at the end of the day. You know, what'd you get done today? You know, what challenges did you run into? How can I help? And we do that for the first week, and then they set sail.
I think we try and keep a certain amount of flexibility in it. So if that's something that the individual that now is being the supervisor, the Monteris supervisor, thinks is going to be beneficial for the intern, we're very open to letting them go in that direction. Or if the intern thinks that's something they would like, then we want to facilitate that conversation as well. So we definitely are open to what both the supervisor and the intern thinks might be best for them in that relationship.
Piper, have we gotten through all of the questions?
Pretty much, yes. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, if anybody else has a question, why don't you go ahead and put that in the chat now? Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up with my favorite question from site visits, and that is, if you could only share one piece of advice with a company who's never had an intern about how to have a successful internship, what would you want them to know? Oh, and I guess, why don't we start with Jonathan?
The one thing I'd want folks to know is that the role that you create and the onboarding are essential. Like those first like 7 days and how you forecast the role playing out in the future is essential. And if you can nail that 7 days and create a great relationship, instill the company values, make sure that transparency is you know the name of the game, and you know make sure that the intern always feels like they can come to you with questions or needing help or you know going on spring break or whatever it is. It's fine. Like make sure all that stuff is kind of like the tone is set in the first week and it really corresponds with the work that they're gonna do. That's what I'd recommend.
Awesome. Susan.
I think it would be trying to encourage everyone to not underestimate the value of internships as a labor pool, quite frankly. Yes, it's great to have them come in and help. If you hire them, that's wonderful as well. They also become your representative back on campus. So that continues to be another avenue to get your company known to potential future employees, as well as, you know, we started internships with SciTech, I think in 2016 or 2017. And so some of those students have graduated, worked a couple of years, and there again, that's another potential avenue of future employees. So don't underestimate the full value of having them come and spend a good summer with you or a good internship experience whenever you apply it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Mike.
Yeah, sorry, and I think I have the same tornado sirens that Jonathan had, so sorry if I get those in the background, but they seem to be coming and going. But no, I think the kind of singular thing really for us is expectations and setting expectations with that intern, that we want them to be a productive member of the team and we want them to add to the project we're working on. And that's the really, in my mind too, the best way for them to add to their resume is to have tangible projects or you know, experiences to show like, hey, this is when I worked with AWS, or this is when I worked with Google Cloud API, and this is how my experience went. And to be able to actually speak to those sorts of things in job interviews or in their career, I think are valuable. And the most beneficial thing, you know, from the company perspective is if they are productive, not only do they get that resume builder, but they also add value to your company. So I think that's where that win-win can be, is if you set that expectation early on that, hey, like this is something where it's got to be beneficial on each side, and we expect you to be a productive member of the team, and then figuring out ways to set them up for success in that role.
Well, that's really awesome. No, great responses on everything, you guys. I'm so pleased with all of your input. I told you this was going to be great. It was going to be a robust discussion. So are there any final questions that anybody has for our panelists? Otherwise, and you can email those to me if you'd like, Becky at mntech.org, and I can get answers for you that way as well. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up, and we'll give people a few minutes back in their day. So this has been a great discussion, and I thank all of you for your questions and for your engagement. This has been great. I'd like to thank Susan, Jonathan, and Mike for sharing their insights and advice. And I really hope that all of you found some helpful ideas on how to improve the internship experience for your interns and for your companies. So we did record today's event, as you know, and we'll post that out on the SciTech blog here in the next week or so. Our blog is at scitechmn.org. You'll see blog at the top of the menu, and I'll also send out a recording to everybody with a link to it, the recording when that's ready. So that's it for us. Thanks very much to everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, SciTech, and very good partner. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Susan.
Thanks all.
Likewise.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.